Just one more hour until reinforcements, aka me, arrive to save the day. But until then, keep your eyes on the highway and keep on trucking with Jimmy Mack on Road Gang Radio, y'all.
We had to do a push on Canada Calling last week because Jim and Joanne actually have lives and things to do and places to go and people to be. Yeah. I also want to point out that later on, after this show has shuffled off its radio coil as the best live transpo show in the known universe, the best pre-recorded transpo show in the known universe continues its theme of Truckers for Troop Week. Our friends at Trucking with OOIDA are going to be talking to Chris Ardmeyer, the executive director of the Veterans Community Project. Yes, it's a tiny home community for veterans who need a place to live while they get their lives back on track. But it is so much more, most notably a place to get help in any form it's needed, no matter what, no questions asked. Failure is not an option, and that attitude informs every decision that the Veterans Community Project makes. That is a long-form conversation. That's the way they do it over there at Trucking with OOIDA with our good friends Scott and Ashley. And that's coming up at 11 in the center, 12 in the east. Speaking of really great content that you can listen to later on, I would really guide you over to our YouTube pages or any place where you get your streaming podcast and give a listen to Living an Epic Life, Pastor Veteran Lee Otto on healing purpose and what it means to actually have a dog in your life that changes your life. Really enjoyed talking to him at length about that, and I think you'll enjoy that interview as well. Just type in Lee Otto. Lee Otto. If you type that in and you type in Road Gang Radio on most of your streaming platforms, you will find it. You can also find it at Living an Epic Life over on YouTube at Radio Nemo, by the way. Give it a chance and check it out. I think you'll really dig it. Man, oh man, you might meet the next important person of your life because of the way you treat your dog. It's a great story and it's really moving. And he, by the way, as you find out later on in the interview, because he wouldn't talk about it, is a bona fide hero and a man who I have a deep admiration for. Speaking of people I have admiration for, a deep admiration for our friends from OBOC. Jim Park and Joanne Ritchie, as they always do, join us this morning for Canada Calling into the Arms of America. Good morning to you both.
Canada Calling.
Mac.
Good morning, Joanne. Jim,
Good
you
morning,
there? There you are, pal. Okay.
I'm here. Yeah, we're here.
So we're getting a lot of great shout-outs this morning. We're talking about shout-outs to pirate destinations, shout-outs to the efforts of the people out there on the road. Joanne, we always kick it off with you giving a hail and hearty shout-out to somebody wonderful. Who you got today?
Yeah, I've got a shout-out this morning for the employees of the Erb Group. They're out of Hamburg, New Hamburg, Ontario, small town. Erb is the company is bigger than the town they live in.
ERB, by the way. Hey guys, Joanne,
ERB,
real quick, it's ERB, not Herb. Erb. So people think it's
Erb,
like okay.
right.
Go ahead.
They're a Canadian family-owned company that's been around for a while. They haul mostly reefers. Those are the ones that you're going to see out on the road. So they recently hosted their annual charity golf tournament and raised over $20,000 to support organizations that make a difference in their local community. So this year's donations went to the Wilmot and Wellesley Resource Center, the Tri-County Mennonite Homes, and the Interfaith Counseling Center. So these are organizations that deliver vital services, including food security initiatives and mental health support and community building programs throughout the Waterloo region of Ontario. That's where Erb is. New Hamburg is part of that area. So these contributions, they bring the total to more than $600,000 in the 32 years that the company's been hosting this tournament. And the company also supports a number of other charitable initiatives, especially those related to family well-being and food security in the local communities throughout Ontario and elsewhere. Actually, there's a couple in the U.S. too where they have terminals. So big high five to those employees who came together for this most recent event to raise money and to support community caring and connection. Way to go, guys.
Yeah, really kind of great stuff happening over there. The Wilmot and Wesley Resource Center, the Tri-County Mennonite Homes, the Interfaith Counseling Center. As you said, its focus is not just on physical health, but mental health, and also a lot of things involving nutrition and food. They're looking at people who really are pressed in. And I like that they are looking at folks who are also micro-focused. Rather than big organizations, they're looking for ways.
Absolutely.
And when you raise the kind of money they raise, it's often more helpful to kind of target it and make sure you make a difference in community after community, all of it kind of adding up to its own sort of mosaic of goodwill that kind of plays itself out there. It's really groovy stuff. Good for them. We're going
Good for them. Yeah.
We're going to pivot to Jim here, by the way, because at some point I do want to bring up later on with you, Joanne, if we still have time, to talk about what your plans and my plans and Jim's plans are to start tracking that tree. But we'll talk about that in a moment here. Jim, we have some stuff here about an inquiry into truck safety, a public inquiry into truck safety out of Quebec. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, the Quebec, like a lot of other Canadian jurisdictions, has seen a huge increase in the number of truck crashes in the past couple of years recently. So the Quebec government has called a public inquiry into why this is happening, which is a pretty bold step. And probably they'll come to some sort of a conclusion, we hope. But in the interim, they're doing a lot more aggressive enforcement on the highways in that province. And they just issued a bulletin or a press release, I guess, a couple of days ago. During the month of October, the DOT there, they call them Sûreté du Québec, pulled 1,600 heavy trucks, pulled them over or detained them in some way, and wrote up to 2,000 tickets in a month. I don't know really if that's a lot compared to what they normally do. They didn't give any background as to what sort of a normal month of enforcement might look like. But it seems to me 1,600 trucks getting 2,000 tickets suggests that there's, something going on here that we need to be looking a bit more closely at. The press release said that most of the stuff that they were targeting was reckless driving, failure to obey traffic signs, tailgating, distracted driving, failure to wear seatbelts, failure to yield the right of way, and excessive speed, which is interesting because Quebec is one of the jurisdictions in Canada that has a speed limiter rule. So clearly that's not the case in Quebec, at least as far as some people go.
It's a great really quickly. It's a great reminder, Jim. It's a great reminder that people don't realize speed limiters only prevent you from going above the speed that you've been limited to. It doesn't prevent you from speeding in a construction zone. It doesn't prevent you from going over the speed limit.
Yeah.
That's the big thing about speed limiters. They don't stop you from doing 50 when you're supposed to be doing 25. That's not what they do, and it's a great reminder, right?
Well, that was one of the arguments that OBAC first put to the anti-speed limiter cause back in the day was, okay, you can keep them slowing on the highway, but what about every other street in the province with a lower speed limit? So that fell on deaf ears, unfortunately.
Go ahead, Joanne.
They don't prevent you from speeding along the highway. I should tell you, if you drive a lot in Ontario and Quebec, there aren't too many trucks flying by me that have their speed limiters operating. I can tell you that much.
Well, I mean, can you imagine that conversation? Well, I thought I was doing the speed limit. I have a limiter. I guess it broke. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened here.
Well, they have no way of testing it, so they got to take your word for it. Check the radar, which they could have done in the first place.
I want to talk about this, Jim, because you and Joanne have spent a lifetime, much like our friends down here at OOIDA, defending the honor and defending the overall safety culture that many people in the industry have. This is the kind of stuff that drives people crazy, and this is the kind of stuff that I don't think every single person doesn't realize is why people have such a distrust of trucks and truckers on the highway. And by the way, I trust truckers on the highway. there are a lot of more people behind the wheel of four wheels who are doing a lot more ridiculous stuff. The difference is when you're an 800-pound gorilla, people don't tend to notice the 1,000 well-behaved 800-pound gorillas. They notice the one that isn't doing what it should be doing. And that's kind of, this is part of this safety push, is to also kind of improve the image of truckers out there. But what do we do about this? How do they, if they're giving out, if that's a normal month, that's a bad scene. How do they really clamp down on this? Is there any way to effectively clamp down on this sort of driving behavior other than saying don't do that and hoping you can produce more law enforcement agents?
Well, unfortunately, we have, I call it an invasive species of driver now on the road. And the ecosystem hasn't adjusted to them yet, or vice versa. I don't think they will until there's a massive clampdown on the way these people drive. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this. A lot of recent immigrants to this country are bringing baggage from the old country, the way they drove, the way they operated, the way they gamed the system back in the old countries, I should say. And they're bringing that here, and we just aren't prepared for it. We aren't prepared for the way they drive. So they don't fit in well, and they do crazy things, and people get hurt. So we have to clamp down on that population of driver somehow. But to be fair about it, you have to, take the entire truck population and say, we're going to watch you really closely until, we weed out the bad ones, or it gets to the point where you realize that, compliance is part of the program here in North America. This is how we do things here. Leave your old country habits back in the old country. This is a new game here. So what I find interesting is the trucking associations, ATA, for example, here in Ontario, the OTA in Quebec, the QTA, the Canadian Trucking Alliance. They've been calling loudly and clearly to government to increase enforcement on the roads with trucks. Now, that might be counterintuitive when you think, well, geez, we're calling down the wrath of enforcement on our industry. But it's the only way we're going to clean up and weed out the bad ones. The good ones won't get harassed. They won't get bothered if they're driving properly. That's good. They'll be left alone for the most part, I believe. So the only way to defend the industry's honor, basically, is to let the bad ones stand out like a sore thumb and lean heavily on them to try and convince them to change their ways. That's the only way to do it.
This is interesting to me because we're dealing with the same problem here. And of course, our friends at the CVTA and the NAPF TDS and a number of other people, OIDA, a lot of folks think that the firewall to prevent an invasive species is, the port of embarkation, is to kind of go right to the source, which is the issuance of the CDL. The issuance of that CDL is really what it kind of comes down to, that there are no sides and there are no exceptions, that this becomes a very limited menu in regards to being like, nope, sorry, no way. There is one really, not punitive or even cumbersome, but actually rigorous process by which we put people on the road. And Jane and I were talking about this as well on Education Station, that if we put up I'll use the word again, a rigorous system of CDL issuance, that in and of itself would bring a lot of this stuff to a thunderous clap of an end. Is that fair, Jim? And I'd love Joanne's opinion on that too. Training is where it all begins.
Oh, I will.
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, training's one thing, but when the training system fails and these people are taught how to pass the test, never mind being trained into what a truck driver needs to know and how they do their jobs. Again, the system falls down. These folks get through the cracks and out onto the road they go. I have a bit more coming up in the toward the end of the show about some initiatives here in Ontario to clamp down on the issuance of licenses here. But it really does fall to the province or the state to ensure that the testing or the examination is being done at a high enough level.
That's where I think you and I agree on. That's what I'm getting at. Right, exactly.
Through the crack. Yeah, absolutely. And we're not seeing that. I mean, here in Ontario, and I've spoken with some people who work for the driver examination company, Circle, and they have quotas. They have so many minutes to do a CDL, a Class A license test, and they're expected to do so many in an 8-hour day. So they have to put these people through at quite a pace, and who knows? They're certainly not a very comprehensive exam, but whatever they are watching for during this examination process, they're focusing on a very, very narrow part of all you have to know to pass your CDL test. So if you can pass one or two of these items in the limited time that's available to do the test, well, then you're away to the races. And if the examiners also, they have pressure to maintain this bell curve of pass-fail rates, and if they start to fail too many of their candidates, then they get hauled into the office and want to know why. So they have to defend their actions to their employers. And if that means maybe passing a couple of people who probably shouldn't be passed just to maintain, the correct ratio of pass to fail, well, it seems that that's what they do. And that's totally inappropriate. There's all kinds of external pressure on these people to do certain things that are sort of contrary to the industry's best interest.
I'll tell you this, and I want to pivot over to Joanne and get her opinion on this before we get to Love in the Time of Tariffs. I think about Barry Corbin in the movie War Games. Mr. McKittrick, after careful consideration, I've determined that your defense system sucks. And that's really what we're talking about here, is that they don't have a rigorous model that doesn't penalize people for actually doing what they should do, and saying the penalty shouldn't be for graduation rates. The penalty should be for putting bad drivers out on the road or for streamlining a process that needs to be actually slower than it's going. Joanne, take a crack at the title. You had something to say about this.
Yeah, I won't belabor the point. I agree with both of you, but I think that the key is in the licensing of individuals to drive a tougher exam, a more relevant exam, and really given to everybody that is out there looking for their CDL before they put them on the road. And for years we've been arguing this, and it's so easy to dump all the responsibility either on the training on the front end, which is also has its issues, and also an enforcement on the other end. But at the end of the day, it's the state or the province that issues that license to get out there on the road. So, this is nothing new. The other thing that I'm a little bit, and this is the cynical side of me coming out, when we see these campaigns where, incredible numbers, impressive numbers of people that are pulled over and trucks and given tickets, you kind of wonder how much of it is a public relations campaign when there's been a big outcry by the public when they see what they think is, unsafe trucks on the road. And I just hope there's more to it than that, and that they really are cracking down on that end. But I agree with both of you that it's the licensing agencies that I think have been getting off the hook for far too long.
You want to hear the cynic in me, and this is my favorite. If you actually give people a proper education and really teach them all they need, all that you can, because after all, you're learning every day of your life, and there are people who are even properly trained who, as drivers 10 years from now, are going to look back and go, man, what I did not know could have been an entire library.
Exactly.
That being said, though, the more you train people, The more you explain to them what they have to do in detail comprehensively, they start understanding their value and they start asking for more money. But we'll pivot from that. Speaking of asking for money, the Great Shakedown continues, but in this time of tariffs, love in the time of tariffs, this is a really sweet shout out, a really nice cross-border story from Alabama, as our good friend Keith Jackson, long rest his soul. Alabama actually made a really wonderful gesture of goodwill to Canada, did he not?
Absolutely. I love this shout out this time to an anonymous stranger from Alabama who mysteriously ordered a burger and fries from a Nova Scotia food truck, and then mistakenly, of course, and then sent cash and an apology by mail. So Darcy and Laura Clark run a food truck in West Chesapeake, Nova Scotia. That's near Halifax, actually part of the greater Halifax area. And a few weeks ago, a customer called in a takeout order for burger and fries, not unusual. But then the order went unclaimed for a while, so they just chalked it up to someone forgetting or maybe losing their way, and they gave the order away to another customer. So this week, they got a handwritten letter in the mail along with $40 U.S. in cash. And the letter had no name but a return address from Alabama, and the sender explained that they had meant to order from a different Bentley's restaurant, much closer to home. And they apologized for the mix-up, and they hoped that the money was enough to pay for their embarrassing mistake. So needless to say, this took Darcy and Laura by surprise. And, of course, the money, which is about $56, $57 Canadian, more than pays for the burger. So they're going to pay it forward and add it to the pot and give away free ice cream to kids next summer from their food truck. But here's the thing. This is the thing I love. They posted this story and a letter on their on Bentley's Facebook page, and so far it's been viewed by more than 80,000 times. And amazingly, they've received hundreds of comments, and every single comment, which is so unusual for a social media post, every single comment has been positive. People love the story, and the love spilled over down there to y'all. So Darcy said it is nice to forge a human connection with one of our southern neighbors at a time when the ongoing trade war has created such tension between the two countries. So they want to make sure that the mysterious Alabamian sees what a positive impact their gesture has had. So they plan to send a Christmas package to the return address on the envelope, still no name, but they're going to include a transcript of all of the positive comments and some other Nova Scotia goodies as well. So there you have it. Love in the time of tariffs. I think that's a great story.
I do too, by the way. And I like I said, it's just one of those kind of amazing things when you realize, you didn't have to do this. It didn't put us out that much. It's a moment of aggravation. But to kind of let people know that there are people out there who are like, no, I'm going to make good on that. By the way, on that note, my dad and I actually are going over to Lowe's tomorrow. We've actually already put it in an envelope. We got to Lowe's, and I didn't realize that somebody would help my dad bring out the mulch. So when I got back from the restroom, a young man had rolled out the mulch that had already been paid for, and I said, do you have any cash on you, Dad? And he goes, oh, no. And I'm like, so I looked at the young man. He was really sweet. I said, when's the next time you work? And he said, Friday. I said, well, we have errands to run on Friday, so he and I are going to stop by there and give that young man a tip. It's never too late, by the way, if you guys forget to do something nice for somebody. There is no statute of limitations on being a good person. There just isn't, and that's the truth right there. Speaking of people doing diligence and maybe against some not-so-good people, Ontario has taken one more step to closing loopholes, Jim. Tell people what I mean by that.
Well, we're going to be, here in Ontario, going to be tightening up the licensing qualification requirements soon, presumably. The legislature here has a bill on the floor. It's not passed yet. It's called Bill 60. It's actually a bill that is designed to sort of speed up residential construction in the province. But this is one of those deals where they tacked on driver training thing at the end of the bill, a pretty good chance the bill's going to pass. So probably the driver qualification thing will pass as well. It's been seen in Ontario as the lack of stringency in application requirements here, widely seen as just a backdoor into some sort of Canadian residency status, which, could somehow lead to permanent residency for people who are trying to immigrate to this country. Other jurisdictions, I gather from what I've read here, are a little bit more stringent on accepting identification and claims of previous, driving history and what have you, whereas Ontario has been pretty lax about it. So a lot of people funnel their immigration plans to Canada through Ontario. And I mean, quite literally, I've heard this said many times, and I've never actually spoken to anybody who could confirm or deny it. So I'm just going to put this on the table as, part of the mythology, I suppose. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. But people who immigrate to Ontario want to become Canadian permanent residents, get possibly their citizenship status at some point in the future. They see driving a truck for 2 years as a really easy way of doing it. There's no great desire to become truck drivers. It's simply a pathway to immigration. So they put in their 2 years' time. There's, I would guess, a little willingness to learn the craft, to become better at it, because you're only going to have to do it for 2 years anyway. If you can survive 2 years, then boom, you're out of the truck and onto something else, because you move up a notch in the immigration ladder. So what's been going on here previously is you could basically show up at a licensing office, say you used to drive a truck in the old country, and they'd say, how long you've been driving? You'd say like 8 years, and they'd say, okay, thanks very much. And they'd give you a Class G, which in Ontario is a passenger car license. And then you could come back in the next day and attempt to challenge the Class A driving test. So if you've had some training, if you know how to drive a truck, or if you've gone to one of these fly-by-night driving schools, chances are you could get through the test. You could squeak through, and then you're on the road with, this is a worst-case scenario, literally no training, no education, no understanding of what trucks are all about and what 80,000 pounds means and all this sort of stuff.
Jim, we got to table it. I got to table it on you, man. This was a great segment. It's so good to have you both back. No, it's okay. We will actually, and by the way, we can reach out to Claire and see if there's any space on Nemo Nation to drop you in to kind of complete the story. So let's figure out something. Dre will be in touch, guys. It's good to have you back.
We're on next week.
Yeah, so there you go.
Next week anyway.
We can have
this is an extra week. So.
Yeah, so what we'll do is I want to talk about that Christmas tree that's coming up, because we always talk about that, but we'll start with this. This is where we'll begin next week on Canada Calling.